Distinguished Alumna Award in absentia, since she couldn't be here. And even if we've heard or read these words before, maybe we even wrote them, it bears sounding them at this deeply meaningful and truly heartbreaking moment. Here are those words. This year, we're thrilled to honor the Distinguished Alumni Award recipient, a woman who has dedicated her life and volunteer service to education. Upon leaving the academy, she completed her English master's in teaching in English. It should come as no surprise that our award winner is a freelance writer for several publications, including one just down the road from us, Greensboro News and Record. It seems her real passion is in teaching, as she dedicated her career toward teaching English, first in a public school setting in Camden, South Carolina, then in San Antonio, Texas, and finally settling into her role as an instructor with San Antonio College, Guilford Technical Community College, and Greensboro College, respectively. Having volunteered with the Guilford Public Schools as well as an ESL tutor through both Jewish Family Services and Centro de Acción Latina. Her dedication to improving the community does not end there. Our distinguished alumna embraced a variety of leadership roles within the Guilford County Democratic Party, including serving as chair. Spent more than 4 years on Greensboro College's Board of Visitors, and was chair of the B'nai Shalom Day School Board of Education. For our beloved Salem, our recipient chaired her 25th class reunion, has served as reunion giving chair, and attended along with many of us the glorious 250th celebration of Salem in 2022. What a special time. One of her fond Salem Academy memories is Miss Nunn complimenting her on her progress in fundamentals of math, demonstrating that even though our alum much preferred the English classroom, from a young start she was a dedicated, committed scholar. We can be assured her great-grandmother and several cousins, all Academy alumni, would be proud. Assuredly, as we honor her today, her husband, Dr. Richard Fox, daughter, son, and 4 grandchildren are most proud. I'm pleased to announce the 2024 Salem Academy Distinguished Alumna Award recipient, Betsy Freeman Fox, 1969. An incredible treatment, an incredible honor for an incredible person, an incredible tribute to her. I feel as we turn to passages that come from the Hebrew Bible this morning, words that should speak to our heart, even during these very, very challenging moments, that we continue to pay tribute to her. These words written by King Solomon, they come from the end of the book of Proverbs. They talk about a strong woman, a woman of valor. Almost it seems that they were written for her. A woman of valor who can find she's more precious than fine pearls. Her husband trusts in her, and so he lacks nothing. She does him good, never harm, all the days of her life. She perceives that her labor is rewarding, and her candle burns on into the night. Her hands to the poor. She is clothed in strength and dignity, and she faces the future cheerfully. She speaks with wisdom. The law of kindness is on her lips. Her children rise up and bless her. Her husband sings her praises. For many daughters have done valiantly, but you, Betsy, you have excelled them all. I'm going to turn our attentions now to the screens at the front of the room that will come on. We have a brief presentation of pictures in Betsy's memory. I'm just learning that Betsy loved that song, that piece that was played under those pictures. So beautiful to see her in her fullness. Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, first movement. And the music here, this was on her piano, and this was her copy of it. CJ, thank you so much. What a treasure this is. What a treasure she was. What a treasure her memory will always be. If you know the words to the 23rd Psalm in English, let's say that together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters. You restore my soul and guide me in straight paths for your name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. friends, we have a couple of tributes as we continue this morning, having heard those words of Scripture. One of the tributes will come from Betsy's son Aaron, who we'll call momentarily. Afterwards, Rebecca will come up to share some words and to share some music. And then afterwards, Rabbi Gutman, our emeritus rabbi, will share words in tribute to Betsy. Aaron, would you please come forward at this time?
When we delicately asked my mom a few months ago what she wanted for her funeral, the only thing she said is, just keep it under 45 minutes. So I guess we're on the clock here. Honestly, figuring out what to do for my mom's funeral was a little challenging. While she and my dad raised me and my sister Jewish, my mom grew up in a Methodist church, and many would be surprised to know she never converted to Judaism. She liked retelling the story of being the director of the Board of Education of my Jewish elementary school, and during one of the meetings, when one of the board members complained that the school was hiring non-Jewish teachers, my mom said, yeah, and now they've got a non-Jew as the director of the Board of Education too. As I mentioned, my mom was raised in the Methodist Church in Dobson, North Carolina. Her daddy, my Papa Freeman, rang the church bells the day she was born. My mom continued to donate to that church all of her life, but she almost never went to Sunday services, and we never celebrated any Christian holidays in her home. As my mom would say, I kind of believe in everything, and I kind of believe in nothing. One time at Temple Emmanuel services, when my sister and I were very young, my dad had dozed off during the sermon, which is honestly now a Fox Noon family tradition. Sorry, Rabbi. Rebecca and I were playing or drawing under the pews. My dad was sleeping, and my mom looked around and said, why am I the only one paying attention? And one time I heard my mom talk about her spirituality. She talked about horses, saying that horses must mean something spiritually to her because, quote, you get so much more from them than you put in. My mom grew up riding horses. It was a way she bonded with her daddy, and my mom continued riding for most of her adult life. She would take me and my sister to the stables and to horseback riding lessons when we were young. But my sister and I, we never took to it like my mom did. In fact, some of my clearest memories of going to where my mom kept her horse Beauty are not of the horses themselves. My mom would let us get a can of soda from the vending machine located next to the stables. Well, this was a very special treat because we were typically prohibited from soft drinks. Papa Freeman used to call it belly wash. One of my clearest memories of going to the farm, to the horse farm, was my first driving around the age of 6. Often, immediately after we turned off the highway and into the long driveway of horse stables at Flint Rock Farm, my mom would stop the car, put me in her lap and have me steer as she worked the pedals. I can still clearly see that gravel road. There were some gentle ups and downs, but it was straight as can be. And it was so long, it looked like it was going to go on forever. You really couldn't see there was a sharp curve right at the end. Now, notwithstanding the story of letting 5-year-olds drive cars, my mom would never describe herself as a risk taker. I'll never forget a brief moment at the beach, one of my mom's favorite places, that sums up a few key traits of my parents. We were on a walk. We ended up in an unfamiliar neighborhood. We came across a fancy new housing development. There was a very large and clear no trespassing sign, which my dad summarily ignored and kept walking. My mom stopped and said, "Richard, we're not supposed to go in there." And my dad said, "I just want to peek." My mom was a rule follower. She recently said, "I'm an establishment figure." She would not describe herself as a risk taker. And yet, she ignored the advice of her high school counselor, who told her she would never make it at UNC Chapel Hill. She was not a risk taker, and yet she traveled alone through Europe as a young college grad. Not a risk taker. Yet, she allowed herself to fall in love with a Jewish man, follow him to Texas, get married, and raise a Jewish family. In fact, around the time I was born, when my dad was in the Army, and we were stationed at the Presidio in California, my dad's enlistment was ending, and he had the choice to leave the military or take an Army assignment in the Sinai in the Middle East. The story goes that my mom said, "Well, you know what? I think we can do it. I think we can make it work. All of us living in the Middle East." And my dad delicately said, "Well, I would go to the Sinai, and you and the kids would stay here on the Presidio in San Francisco." And so that's when my mom decided we were done with the Army. And it was time to move back to North Carolina. We recently asked my mom what values were important to her. What advice around values would she give her grandkids? She thought it was a ridiculous question. To her, there was not some menu of values that you get to choose from. You just do the right thing. Moral and lawful, as she put it. You show up, you help out, you get the job done, and you do not brag about it. No grievance or slight should keep you from doing what's right and from being there for those who need you, especially your parents. My mom would take me and my sister to visit Great Aunt Susan at her nursing home at least twice a year, and those were often the only visitors that Great Aunt Susan had that year. But we did it every year. My mom could often be found moving kudzu or poison ivy from family products. My mom diligently exercised, not with zest, but just because that's what we used to do. Her year as the chair of the Guilford County Democratic Party in 2020 was stressful, but she knew a steady and experienced hand was needed. Throughout my childhood, Mom cooked interesting, really good food for us every single day, despite the fact that she did not really like cooking, nor did she really enjoy food. She always said, "I eat to live rather than eat." And she certainly would never take credit for a recipe. Even her famous apple cake, she would always remind folks it was originally great Aunt Debbie's present. I recently asked my mom why, when we were growing up, since she didn't really care for cooking, and why did she just give us microwave meals every night? She gave me a look that and simply said, "You just don't do that." I'm sure my mom inherited this industriousness and sense of duty from her mom. My granny, my mom said granny, always knew what to do. My mom was not sentimental. She once brought my toy Nerf bow and arrow to the class she was teaching at Greensboro College to deal with the students who fell asleep during lecture. But she also kept the thank you letters her students from Escobar Middle School in San Antonio wrote her in the 1970s. We still have those in our house today. My mom was kind and warm. Once, when she saw me getting overly frustrated with my daughter, Aurora, she admonished me and said, "You be nice to my granddaughter." Her grandkids all have memories of Grandma Betsy. They got a chance to share those with Rabbi Gutman this week. I'll never forget them playing motorboat, go so fast in the pool. Bouncing them on her knee, right over horse. My mom would say that she and I shared trait of being melancholy. That Dad and Rebecca were always the cheerful ones in the family. But I love the memories of Mom being playful, carefree, laughing. Sledding on Brown Park comes to mind. We had so much fun. We made movies with our Super 8 camera. She took us to North Carolina Shakespeare Festival plays. She loved to read. She loved to travel. My mom showed up for us. She was so important to so many of us. We all have stories of my mom helping us, for being there for us. She gave us so much. It will be hard to live without her. But we carry her with us by following her example, by showing up, by helping out, by doing the work, by showing our love for each other, by being there for each other.
Today, we gather to honor the life of a wonderful person, my mother, Betsy, who was adored and admired by all who had the privilege to know her. In the final months of her life, our dad, Richard, had the beautiful idea to collect memories and impressions from her friends and loved ones. She listened to each one, and they meant a lot to her and to all of us. Reflecting on her life, it really stands out. People who knew my mom saw how special she was. and they truly loved and cherished her. I've said it many times, especially recently, but it bears repeating now. My brother Aaron and I were so lucky. We had the best mom in the whole world. She and Dad always made us feel loved, supported, and free to explore life on our own terms. She gave us the courage to be ourselves without pressure or judgment, and that gift has stayed with me throughout my whole life. I'm crying out a lot of liquid right now, excuse me. I remember a solo performance class I took after college. And during a meditation exercise about our childhood homes, I wrote about sliding into an imaginary strawberry milk water park with Aaron and me splashing around in it and laughing. And it was just so ridiculous and so absurd that I couldn't get through it. I was reading it aloud to the class and I couldn't get through it without just cracking up. When I finished, my teacher said, "Rebecca, you have something I have never encountered in any of my classes." I prepared myself for her to tell me I had an unparalleled imagination. I had it. I had the defining voice of my generation. Instead, my teacher said something that has stayed with me ever since. "Rebecca, you had a happy childhood." And it's true. Thanks to our mother and our father, Aaron and I were raised in love and in joy. Our mother was patient and kind and always encouraged me to follow my own path. When I took a class as a kid in acrobatics, and then I decided I didn't want to continue, she said, "Okay." She allowed me to make my own decisions, never pushing me into anything I didn't want. The respect that she showed me as a child became even more powerful as I grew older, and I worked with children myself, and especially since I've had children of my own. I've tried to emulate her respect for the essential dignity and self-determination of young people in my own relationships with my daughters. Our mother was a trailblazer, someone who broke cycles of harm and negativity that are common to her generation, no one here, of course. She shielded Aaron and me from toxic attitudes, protected us from bigoted people, and she taught us to stand up for ourselves and for others. She made sure we knew that even the stories of people who seemed like perfect successes were far more complex in reality. And while so many of my friends started getting scared of turning into their mothers, I thought to myself I would be lucky to turn into my mom. Over time, I realized that my sense of humor was just like hers. It's specific, absurd, and deeply relational. One story in particular captures her humor perfectly. Aaron and I were kids in the backseat of the car, bickering as usual. We were trying to one-up each other with all the weird things that we had eaten. And I said, "I ate paper." Aaron responded with, "I ate dirt." I didn't want to be outdone, so I said, "I ate crayon." Aaron shot back, "I ate spider." At that point, my mom, who had been listening quietly, very calmly said, "Well, I ate a gerbil." We were stunned. "What? Who's gerbil?" She told us it was my cousin Lou's. He went out of town, and he told me to take care of his gerbil, so I took care of it. Our jaws dropped, and we asked her, "How did she eat it?" At the next stoplight, she turned around, raised her fist to her mouth, as if cramming it in, and said, I just ate it. And we believed her for a long time. That's the kind of humor that she had. It was quick, it was absurd, and utterly convincing. I'm proud to have followed in her footsteps, as well as my grandmother's, by becoming a teacher. Moving here to North Carolina to start and raise my family near my parents was one of the best decisions I ever made. My mom was always there for me, and I will never forget the memories we created. Packing up my life in Chicago together, going fishing at the farm, or traveling to Italy with her and Aaron. The love my mother and father had for each other was truly special. They met as undergraduates at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and their love story began. Even when my mom graduated early and traveled through Europe for 3 months, their bond remained strong, sustained by airmail letters that kept them connected across continents. In 1977, they were married at her childhood home in Dobson, marking the beginning of a lifelong and joyful partnership. Throughout their lives together, whether living in San Antonio, San Francisco, or Greensboro, their love never wavered. It was a love that was apparent to all who knew them, and something that Aaron and I were incredibly lucky to grow up with. Their devotion to one another set a beautiful example of what a strong, loving, and enduring partnership looks like. And I like to think that their big romantic love gave both Aaron and me the foundation to choose our own wonderful partners in Lonnie and Leon. For close to 50 years, my parents' love for each other and their shared commitment to our family and community shaped everything they did. I want to acknowledge here too that our father has been a rock for our family through the hardship in the last period of our mother's life. He has been a perfect model of love, care, tenderness, and devotion, and we are so grateful for his example. Our mother and father were present at every milestone, big and small. I can't see, hold on. My parents attended every one of my shows from 4th grade until 2022. When I invited my first grade students to our wedding, my mom made them cupcakes with little tiny bride and groom figurines on top. And I still laugh remembering how she emphatically told everyone, probably some of you here in this room, who wanted one, those are for Rebecca's students. Most of all, she loved and was immensely proud of each of her grandchildren, Ruthie and Muriel, and Aurora and Ronan. Some of her happiest days were spent playing with them, whether in the ocean at Curie Beach or at Blaisdell Park in Claremont, California. I take comfort in picturing her cuddling my girls on the couch or pulling them and their cousins in the wagon. My mother was a constant source of love, support, and joy to me for 44 years. I love her deeply, and I feel honored to have been her daughter. Everything good about me comes from my parents, and I will carry her spirit with me every day. She was fun, beautiful, adventurous, honest, and no nonsense. We will miss her endlessly, but I will forever be grateful for the life she gave me and the love she surrounded us with. Thank you for everything, Mom. We will always love you. And now I have to sing. Okay. Okay. Give me a moment. This prayer that I'm going to sing is the closing lines of the Kaddish, which is maybe the most holy prayer in Judaism, and it's what mourners sing, or we recite it rather. And it means, may the one who creates peace in the heavens create peace for us and for all humanity. And we all say amen. I still need a second. Get my little note. D4. Okay. Oh. Okay. Hold on. Sorry. Enjoy these children for a second. Okay. Oh, say shalom, Dimroma, Uyase shalom, Aleinu, Ve'amor, Israel, Ve'imenu, Amen. Oh, say shalom, Dimroma, Uyase shalom, Aleinu ve'amor, ve'amor Israel, ve'imenu, Amen. Oh, say shalom, Dimroma, Uyase shalom, Aleinu, Ve'amkol Yisrael, Ve'yimeru, Amen.
Just a historical note. First time I heard her sing that was in 1995 with Jesse Grandin. It was the first time in the history, more than 100 years in the history of this congregation, that two teenagers sang from the pulpit. So it's not only beautiful, but as I said to you, it takes me back 29 years. It's always part of our history as a congregation. So speaking of history, many years ago, more than I want to remember, when I was 16 years old, I was in the 10th grade in Nashville, Tennessee, and it was our confirmation class. And I came to our rabbi, Rabbi Randall Falk, blessed memory, and I said to him, you know, I have an idea that in confirmation, that we should, as a class, sing the song Turn, Turn, Turn by Bob Dylan. I like the song, but I like the version of the Birds even better, especially remember Roger Glenn on his 12-string Rickenbacker. And then, lo and behold, I was shocked to learn that Bob Dylan did not write the words to that song, that they were actually written in the book of Ecclesiastes thousands of years ago, and that they were attributed to King Solomon, who was known as being an incredibly wise person. And we ended up not only singing the song, but each of us took a line in that class and gave a little sermonette about the line. And when I was thinking about today, I came back to that passage. All of us gathered here this morning have gathered in such a sad time for Betsy's family and for our community. We have suffered a great loss. The fabric of our lives has been torn. What was once a beautiful fabric, and I'm not talking about this one, which I'll mention, now has holes in it. And our response to this loss is highly individual. Some of us feel numb, some feel pain, some feel even a certain amount of relief. Some of us might have a lump in our throats and words unsaid. Some may find it easy to cry, others very difficult to cry. And you know what's great about Jewish tradition? It makes room for all of those expressions of grief. Our sages, the rabbis tell us there's not a wrong way to grieve. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel once taught there are three ways to mourn. The first is to cry. The second is to grow silent. And the third is what you just did, Rebecca, is to transform sorrow into song. So whether you are crying or silent or song or transferring sorrow into song, know that whatever you're feeling right now is right. So today I want to return to that passage in Ecclesiastes because maybe we can find some wisdom and comfort there. There is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn, a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep, a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. Yes, as King Solomon said, to everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. And this is a time to mourn. We have gathered here for the reverent purpose of expressing our love and paying our respects to the memory of Betsy Freeman. Again, we're sad. We're sad because we've lost a good friend, a passionate activist for social justice, a wonderful mother, grandmother, sister, and a fabulous spouse. And she has passed, quite frankly, too early. For everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to die. Many of us know that her death was not smooth and easy. Many know what ALS is and the ravages of the disease. Some would actually say that her passing was a blessing. She suffered. Every visit by a friend or by her family showed that she was worse off than the previous visit. Betsy, she confronted this adversity with as much strength as she could muster. She did so with a sense of grace and fortitude that was inspirational to everyone who came to see her. I remember one Saturday when Nancy and I went to her house and together with Richard, we watched the UNC basketball game. Moments of happiness. The joy on her face when UNC prevailed was significant. But even then, it was very difficult to contemplate how fast she was going. To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born. Betsy was born in 1951. Her mother was a math, biology, and home economics teacher. Her father was a teacher, attorney, and judge. And if you look at this casket, you'll see a crochet blanket that was made by Betsy's mom, Claire. To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to learn. She attended Surrey Central High School, graduated from the Salem Academy, she heard. She attended the UNC Chapel Hill. She studied English and psychology. She was among the first freshman women to live in the Keenan dormitory. And she helped orchestrate, I'm not sure, Rebecca, you're going to have to tell me this later on, the first year student takeover of Keenan Dorm's government. She graduated from college a semester early, traveled to Europe. Along for 3 months, she returned to Chapel Hill for a Master's of Arts in Teaching. She completed a Certificate of Advanced Studies in Literature at UNC Greensboro. She was a lifelong learner and dedicated reader. She was a member of 2 book clubs. And even with ALS, she managed to read books like Thomas Mann and Samuel Richardson, even if they had to be read aloud to her. To everything there is a season, a time for a purpose, every purpose under heaven, a time to work. Betsy worked for 23 years as an English teacher in middle school, high school, college, community college settings. She was a tutor in English as a foreign language and volunteered in the public schools at Guilford County Schools for 12 years. She worked as a freelance writer in San Francisco, proofread her brother Samuel's and her sister-in-law Annette's books. In 2004 and 2005, she compiled and wrote letters of her paternal grandparents, who were also teachers. The resulting manuscript is part of the Surrey County Digital Heritage Project. To everything there is a season, a time for purpose under heaven. There is a time to work politically to improve our beloved state and our country. For decades, Betsy was an active member and organizer of the North Carolina and Guilford County Democratic Party. The following tribute was published yesterday by the Guilford County Democratic Party. Quote, remembering Betsy Fox. We are heartbroken to learn that our good friend and former chair, Betsy Fox, lost her battle with ALS Tuesday morning. Betsy began volunteering with the Guilford County Democratic Party more than 20 years ago, working in the office one day a week. She went on to serve as our treasurer, then for vice chair and first vice chair. And along the way, she was also a precinct chair, poll reader, poll observer, state executive committee member, CEC member, treasurer for Democratic Women, a delegate to the 2008 National Convention, and our 2011 Democrat of the Year. She was the person that we called whenever help was needed. In January 2020, she stepped up to finish the unexpired term of our chair. COVID was on the horizon, and we didn't know how that would affect the presidential year. We soon found out, and Betsy guided us through, working long hours with our team. She is already deeply missed by those who worked with her and those who knew her best. Our thoughts and our prayers are with Betsy's husband, Richard, and their children, Aaron and Rebecca, and all of her family and love from the Democratic Party. For everything there is a season, a time for purpose under heaven. There's a time for family. Betsy was central to this family. Particularly in the past decade, she more or less, in my opinion, became the family's matriarch. She'll be greatly missed by her kids, Rebecca and Aaron, their spouses Leon and Bonnie, her brothers and her sisters, and their spouses Frank, Smith, Amos, and Samuel, her sister and brother-in-law Judy and Philip, many beloved cousins, nieces and nephews, her grandchildren Ruth, Muriel, Aurora, and Ronnie, and most especially her husband Richard. To everything there is a season and time for every purpose under heaven. There's a time to be a little sister. She was a wonderful sister to Frank, Smith, Amos, and Samuel. She was the youngest of the family. Growing up with 4 older brothers must not have always been the easiest thing for a little girl to do. But she was born on her father's birthday, and her father was so excited to have to have a girl, that as I think Aaron, you mentioned, he was so excited. A girl. He ran down to church and rang the bell. Wow. She and her older brothers grew up in Dobson. They had an idyllic childhood: horses, bikes, roller skating, sledding, swimming, playing with the kids in the town. She loved riding horses, as you heard. She spent a lot of time at the family farm, keeping it organized and clean. Her family started going on vacation to the beach in 1954 and continued that until, as you can see, the family got too big. But they still got it. She was literally the glue that kept this family together. Her brothers idolized her. They idolized their little sister. To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to love and to be compassionate. Richard and Betsy were married in 1977. In Dobson, they lived in San Antonio, San Francisco, picking up lifelong friends along the way, settling in Greensboro in 1984. They were active members of this congregation for more than 40 years. Their marriage was a marriage made in heaven, and both of them were extremely blessed. Started dating in 72. Richard fell for her immediately. However, the most interesting thing about their relationship, according to Richard, was that the more he got to know her, the more he liked her. And that this would continue for 47 years of their marriage. Richard loved everything. In his view, when it came to Betsy, there was nothing not to like. She was extremely devoted and supportive to Richard. In Richard's view, up until last year, every year with Betsy was a good year. A year even better than the preceding one. And Betsy would often tell Richard and the kids that the older that they became, except maybe when we were teens, that the older that they became, the more she loved them. To everything there's a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. There's a time to be a grandmother. Grandma Betsy. This is for you. Betsy adored her grandchildren, and they loved her. One can truly say that for the past 10 years, it was her grandchildren that brought a particular sparkle to her eyes. Whenever we were together as couples, Nancy and I often heard about her grandchildren. And of course, we share stories about us. Aurora remembers walking with her in the morning, finding a secret neighborhood. She said that she loved her walks with her and playing Play-Doh with her and being alone with her. Her grandchildren loved her pancakes. Apparently, she had this thing I never learned how to do, where she would take the syrup on the pancake and you flip it over, and Pancake would have a face. Very creative. Ruth even talked about her going to the beach, even in the winter. Ruth felt that Betsy was always looking after them. She loved taking the grandkids to the museum, to the pool, to pajamas parties at the beach or the farm. Of course, they all spoke of their grandmother's amazing spaghetti sauce. She had an individual relationship with each one of her 4 grandchildren. Betsy once cried when she said she's not sure that one of them will remember because he's so young. Therefore, as we talked about yesterday, lighting a yard-type memorial candle on the anniversary of her death and telling Betsy stories each year now has to become a part of your family tradition. Ruth kind of summarized it all on behalf of herself and the other 3 grandchildren when she said, if I could say anything to her today, it would be, I will never forget you. I will always have memories of you. I love you. To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be a mom. As you heard from Aaron and Rebecca, she was a great mother, protected, loved her children without limit. Her caring, concerned love for the 2 of you was as big as the universe. She had this weird sense of humor, as we learned, and would often joke and laugh with them and make them laugh. She was dedicated to her children, even as adults, often helping out in any way that she could. And that would include driving Aaron and then Aaron and Lonnie when they moved. She was a beloved mother. Lonnie remembers when she came to help them out after the war was born or being sick at the time. Betsy dropped everything to help and support her family. Right? Aaron and Lonnie were stressed and worried. She provided comfort. She was filled with love and respect for her kids. She even helped Lonnie pick out a wedding dress. Lonnie says having her there meant so much. Leon, her son-in-law, is grateful for her involvement in the lives of the children and grateful for his own personal relationship. The bottom line was that Betsy provided stability for the family and was an aspirational role model for her kids. She was an aspirational role model for her children. To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be compassionate. I want to say several words about my friend Richard as a husband, and especially the way, Richard, you took care of Betsy in this time of her greatest need. When I was with you guys, I felt that there was a divine inspiration to your love and care for her, which was, quite frankly, absolutely extraordinary. You were by her side constantly. And I and others saw the way you took care of her. And we saw your love, patience, compassion, main touch. We were inspired. Richard, you took care of her in a way that even the angels in heaven must have. This is such a terrible loss, and Richard said it so well. And I asked him if you could tell him one thing. And his answer was, if a miracle could occur, I'd want to say to Betsy, get well and come back. Rebecca wrote of her mother, Betsy Freeman Fox had principles, curiosity, precise and steady work ethic. An ingenious sense of humor, she was reserved, honest, and direct in her communication. And these qualities remained with her throughout her illness. Betsy made people feel comfortable whenever you were with her. She was so smart and so confident in whatever she did. She led a wonderful life. but it was quite frankly a life that was too short. When I was thinking about her yesterday, I remembered something written by a rabbi friend of mine, Rabbi Gila Reza, that I think Betsy would have liked. This is what my friend Gila wrote. Life is not a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty, well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and proclaiming, "Wow, what a ride!" That's Betsy. And at least it was until she got so sick. Yes, my friends. Yes, Betsy. There is a time for everything, a time for every purpose under heaven. But this morning we adapt the passage because we say there's a time to be born, a time to die, but a time to learn, a time to work, a time to be involved in improving the world through political involvement, a time for family, a time to be a sister, a time to be a mom, a time to be a grandmother, a time to be a spouse, and a time to love and show compassion. There is a time for everything, a time for every purpose under heaven. There's a time not only to mourn, but to remember. Let me say that again. There's a time to mourn, but also a time to remember because Betsy Fox leaves behind a strong and incredibly strong legacy of bonds which cannot be broken. She leaves behind memories which cannot be erased. God has given us a very powerful gift, this gift of memory. This precious gift keeps alive those who go on. And Betsy's memory is still with us, for she remains alive in everything that you as her family hold precious. May she now rest in peace. May Betsy be remembered by all those who were privileged to be touched by her. May her name be a blessing in time to come. Adonai Natan, God has given, Adonai Lakah, but God has taken away. Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorah. Blessed indeed be the name, be God's name. For all of the wonderful times in between the giving and the taking, the times of happiness and joy, the times of love and family that all of us experienced with Betsy Friedman Fox. Zikrona Lebracha, may her memory be a blessing now and always. And let us say,
Let's stand together for the traditional El Malay Rahami prayer. El Malay Rahami, Shohei Bameromi, Amse Minpanehona, Taha, Kanfe Ashevina, Imkedoshim Tehorim, Kizohar Arakia Mazirim, Et Nishmat, Miriam Elisheva, as Frank Clara shall follow Lama, Balahamim, Yasireha Veseker Knafav, Leolamim. Vizror Vetzrachaim et Nishmata, Adonai hu nachalaka, V'tanuach v'shalom, al mishkava, v'nomar, Amen.
O compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence, to Mary Elizabeth, daughter of Frank and Clara, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in your eternal presence, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace. And together let us say,
Friends, in just a moment, we are going to make our way out of the main sanctuary here. In doing so, we will accompany Betsy out to where the transport vehicles are. We ask that we do not visit in front of Temple with the family at this time. Just going to take a quick look at my watch. It is now 20 minutes after 12, and so we are going to reconvene for interment over at the Greensboro Hebrew Cemetery, which is on the corner of Van Story and Gate City Boulevard. You need to put into your GPS Greensboro Hebrew Cemetery. And we will reconvene there in 1/2 hour at 10 minutes till 1. We will not be putting the blinkers on our cars, nor will we be turning on our headlights and driving in a processional. There are too many of us, and it's just far too dangerous. So our custom is to drive over there safely on our own, but we will reconvene at that time, at which point we will bring Betsy to her eternal rest. Friends, I'm also I want to tell you that on Saturday night as well as on Sunday night at the Fox Home, which is 904 Chatfield Drive in Greensboro. And I keep saying Greensboro because if you don't put that in, you might wind up in Jamestown or you might wind up elsewhere. You want to be together with the family. It really is meaningful. Please don't say, oh, others will go. I think when we ourselves bring our presence and our fullness, it provides, together with God, a community, such an incredible amount of comfort, which is, I think, what we all really have in our hearts at this point. I'd like to ask for the pallbearers to please come forward at this time.